I feel so good.
I'd like to welcome you to the February board meeting. I will call this meeting to order. I would like to stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Rick, am I live? There's a switch on it. How much help does the president switch on?
How about now? All right, congratulations, Mr. President. My name's Matt Campick. I am the president. To my left, we have a guest today, so everyone gets to be kind when they come to the microphone today. We have with us Monica Fedry, who is the Associate Project Manager for Strategy and Operation from Real Foods. And what's significant about that is she's part of the team that came in and did an analysis of our food and beverage operation and gave us a report of which we've begun our arm wrestling over the last week. To her left is Dan Liniger, our Vice President. Mark Eckert is our Treasurer. Sean Kreiderman is my enthusiastic Secretary. We have Larry Santora is our Assistant Treasurer. We have my good friend, who is Denise Lexell, who is a Director. Next to her is Chuck Kill, also a Director. Our General Manager, Walter Yazzie, and our brains and our support and our Executive Assistant to Walter, Charlie Shawless. So that's everybody that's up here at the head table. I need a motion to approve the January minutes, please. I need a second. All in favor of approving those minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next thing we're going to discuss on the agenda is the strategic plan update. It's our first topic at every board meeting after we get through the minutes. Rick, first slide. I want to welcome you to this monthly presentation. It is another glimpse into where we're at with our strategic plan and part of our process to keep ourselves accountable to you. The first thing we're going to do is review our mission statement. This statement articulates the reason why our corporation exists. You'll get used to seeing it. The focus, besides the beauty of living in this place, is the fact that your corporation provides a broad variety of amenities and activities, maintains our facilities, and delivers quality services to all of our members. Next slide. And this is our vision statement. We're on a journey, and we're on a journey to achieve this status. Today in our presentation, we're going to address master plan facilities and favorite place dining. Next slide, Rick. So goal 2, master plan facilities, is for us to have facilities that meet our goal of providing a relaxed, casual lifestyle for our residents and guests in a well-maintained, attractive environment. We protect, preserve, and grow the assets through comprehensive capital planning that addresses obligatory and aspirational improvements within a unified facilities master plan. So this goal is connected to developing a facilities master plan. We've been doing this work over the years without such a plan, and we're going to change that in the coming year. Next slide. So our objectives, we have 5 objectives. I'm going to talk about 4 of them. The only one I'm not talking about is creating a facility planning committee, because we're not that far down the road yet. I'm going to talk about what you told us. I'm going to tell you what you told us in the McMahon survey about what you wanted in the future. I'm going to talk about the master plan itself, where we're at. I'm going to tell you that Walter's in charge of the 4th bullet and our commitment to maintaining our facilities at the highest level we can. Next slide. Nope, back one. Back one. There you go. So in the McMahon survey, you told us you wanted potential future improvements. And what you said at the Preserve, you wanted a large outdoor dining and bar area with views to dine and socialize. In Mountain View, you told us we needed to update the dining room, provide a larger indoor-outdoor bar lounge space, update the bar and grill area. For recreational activities, you told us you wanted us to add or improve to our sidewalks or our walking trails. And for the community overall, you gave us instructions to produce a facilities master plan. So those are the highlights of what you told us. In developing the campus master plan, Walter and I are currently reviewing the latest version of the contract that came from the McMahon Group. And Walter's advised me we have more corrections to make, so we'll do that, and we'll continue to negotiate with the McMahon Group. Developing the campus tour program, I think it's important for you all to have access to our facilities so you can understand when we say something needs to be done, you can see it with your own eyes. And we tasked Walter with that responsibility this year, is to develop a plan to bring to the board on how we can do that for you all as our residents. And in maintaining our current facilities, the staff also has that responsibility. And we do have a 2024 facility maintenance plan, and Ray Kuhn runs point on that, and I'm sure you'll be hearing from Ray later this morning. So that's my brief update on what we're doing around the master plan and communicating what we've heard from you all. And I'm going to ask Chuck Kill, who is our champion for Goal 5, to give you a brief update.
Are we working?
Next slide.
I'm excited to be the champion for food and beverage. I've been fortunate in my career to have spent 35 years as financial management executive for several retail chains, including a few years as VP of Finance for a restaurant chain with 41 full-service restaurants. Over the past few months, I've had the opportunity to work with Alan and Liz. I've noticed that our restaurants have a unique set of challenges to deal with. Fortunately, we have 2 great leaders like Alan and Liz to be able to fine-tune these dials, to be able to hit the sweet spot and to minimize our F&B subsidies. Goal 5, favorite place dining. To make SaddleBrooke Two the dining destination of choice by providing superior food, beverage, and service, and to enhance the membership experience. Today I'll be providing an update regarding objectives 1, 4, and 8 today for Goal 5, food and beverage. Goal 4, objectives. Number 1, use feedback from members to measure success. F&B are using 2 methods to collect customer feedback. Jot form feedback, the marketing team, and Open Table. Ellen has been working with marketing to set up QR codes available to all residents using our restaurants. We appreciate all those who have used the codes to give us feedback to Alan and his team. Over the past 3 months, the overall rating has improved from 3.07 to 4.51. Now, Alan has a goal, had a goal in the beginning of 3.5, and now we're at 4.51. So I think it's time for Alan to set a new goal of maybe 5.0.
Yeah.
Ongoing strategy specials. Bi-weekly specials are run at both restaurants. Monthly wine dinners at Mountain View. The next slide. Oh, that's it. He doesn't have that. Whiskey Wednesdays at the Preserve. Thursday date night at the Preserve. Thursday half-off bottle of wine at Mountain View, and fish fry at Mountain View. Member satisfaction goal. The staff is currently working to produce the KPIs, and we will be able to present the staff goal and the progress we are making relative to the feedback that we are receiving. Next slide.
It didn't get in there, Chuck. I apologize. Chuck, thanks for that update on our goal 5, our favorite place dining. You want to say something else?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
No, there was another slide which shows the progress that Alan has been making.
There it is.
There it is. You can see it's gone up quite a bit, and the 4.51 is for February, so I'm be excited to see what March is going to be like.
Yeah, I just have to reinforce what Chuck's saying to you. Walter and Alan and Liz and Terry Dempsey have been working this problem set very hard. Michelle is now part of the team doing the data collection. But this is a great news story. If you look at this chart, from October to February, it's just all uphill. And I think that's reflective of the people that are going to the restaurant and the experience they are having. It's reflecting the extra effort that's going into training and leadership on behalf of our leader team. So I just want to point that out and highlight that. We don't often get to share exciting good news with you all. This is a good news story. And Walter, having said that, you now get to brag about everything else we're doing.
All right, thank you, Matt. To add on to that, I just continue to encourage you to fill out the feedback forms. That's why we're getting this data from the food and beverage area, but there's more feedback forms out there. Almost in every activity you're going to be doing, our marketing is going to have some type of feedback form for you. So as you can see, it helps us kind of get a feel for what the community is doing. So we appreciate your feedback. I'm going to run down just real quick some updates on what the staff has been doing. You know, we're at the end of February and the staff has been very busy. So with accounting, we're getting ready for the audit this year. So Terry, you're going to hear from him in a little bit here when he goes over the financial statement. He is very busy getting ready for the audit. That's going to be a challenge this year. As you know, the first part of this year we had TEI, and that wasn't the ideal software, so Terry's going to have to work hard to dig out the information he needs from that, but I think we're past that and we're on North Star now, so that's working out well. And because we're on North Star, now Terry's back to kind of our standard. He's able to get out the financial statements within the first 7 to 10 days of the month, so we're looking good with that, getting that information out to the community a lot quicker now. The administration has been working hard on goal number 6. Again, we're lining up with this strategic plan, and their focus lately has been on the new homeowner orientations. So they're trying to get a lot of that information on the website for the new homeowners. So that'll help out when if you have friends that are buying houses and are new here, a lot of that's going to be on the website. And with that, you're going to notice that I'm going to continue this year to push you to use the website. A lot of the information that you need is on the website. You have to get used to going to the website and looking for the information, the updates, you know, the shows, everything's there. And if you go to the home page, maybe the quickest way to do is just hit the search button and type in your search instead of trying to follow through all of the different menus. If you just search, that might get you to where you want quicker. Again, we have so much information, and that home page of the website is only so big, you can only fit so much on that real estate, and everybody wants a piece of that real estate, and we just can't do it. So I would recommend you use the search to find what you're looking for. Common areas, they're rolling, almost literally, right? So you're going to hear from him here in a minute. We've got Michael, who's going to give you an update after I get out of the way. Fitness, fitness is setting high goals. I mean, we've set some high goals for them. And the good news at fitness is in December, they had revenues around $25,000. In January, they had revenues around $30,000, and that's as much as revenue as they've ever made. So they're doing good. They've got some new classes coming in April, and you're going to see some new instructor faces and new faces at the front desk. So they're working hard there in fitness. Food and beverage. Again, you saw the report of our rating seems to be going up in the right direction. You're going to hear from Monica, who Matt just introduced, and she's going to give you a good briefing and introduction to the food and beverage world that we work in. The Easter brunch and dinner at the Mountain View Bar and Grill and at the Preserve are filling up quickly, so make your reservations if you're interested in going to the Preserve or Mountain View for Easter. Human resources. We don't talk about human resources much because it doesn't really touch the residents directly, but we have 187 employees. That doesn't include the Troon has the golf employees, so the 187 are the HOA employees. And just to kind of give you an idea of how we're doing there, in terms of turnover, the Arizona rate for non-food and beverage turnover is 38.7%. We here right now are tracking at 40.9%. So we're just a little bit higher than the Arizona average in our personnel turnover in non-food and beverage area. Food and beverage area is a little bit different animal. The Arizona standard is 79.7 rate of turnover. We're doing better. Our restaurants are 68%. So, I mean, still high, but we're doing better than the average in Arizona. So, human resources is working hard to, and that's another one of our goals is to make, from the strategic plan is to make our work environment inviting and being able to keep our employees for a longer amount of time. All right, on to lifestyles. If you're interested in the Bob Seger tribute, it's too bad. It's sold out. So, sorry about that. You're going to have to start jumping on these shows. I've noticed that these shows are selling out quicker now. So, thanks for supporting the shows and the activities that we're putting on here. Now, lifestyle, I also want you to know if you want to make a room request and reservation, you can do that online. Again, I recommend that you go search for forms and then look under miscellaneous and you will find the room reservation form if you're interested there. On over to golf. So golf, every year they do aerification, so they're in the process of scheduling that out. I think the board has their recommendation, so they can approve that for Paul. It looks like the first 9 of the Mountain View golf course, we're waiting for Troon to do some final punch lists to get that set up so that it's ready when they're ready to open that, maybe around April. Let's see what's going on in operations. So Matt has the fitting days are off and going again this year. So March 4th, you're going to have fitting days for Ping. March 22nd, you'll have multi-vendor fitting day. So make sure you get with Matt or Mike to sign up for that. Also, we're busy getting ready for the women's collegiate that we have every year. So that's going to be March 14th through the 17th. And so Matt is also asking for a few residents to lend them golf carts. So get with Matt if you have an extra golf cart they can use to support that event. We don't talk about IT very much. They support everything we do. We can't operate without them. One of the things they've brought up is when we transitioned, we built our backbone, our IT backbone. And so right now it looks like a lot of switches. You know, we have our main servers at the admin office, but in order to get down here, we have to go through a couple switches to, you know, get the electrons down here. Those switches are getting old, and those things aren't cheap. So the IT department's letting me know that we're going to have to plan for replacing some of these switches. Again, this goes back to the reserve money. You know, reserve money is not all just for, you know, different activities. It's for us to replace these switches. So probably in 25, we're going to be replacing these switches, and we'll make sure that's in the reserve study. Marketing. So marketing. One thing that we're going to roll out this week is going to be your capability to pay for your meal at the food and beverage restaurants through the app. So we're going to roll that out. Marketing's been working hard with North Star to get that in place. So just be aware that by the end of the week, you should be able to try that function out for small groups. If it's a group of 8 or more, I think they're just going to have you pay the standard way. But if it's just a small table of 4, you're going to be able to just pay on your app. So that'll be pretty convenient. One other thing that we're doing, again, and part of the strategic plan and goals, is we're looking to partnership with local realtors. And so that's going to be happening soon. We're going to set up a meeting, and I think early March here, and we're going to invite some of the realtors out to start interacting with them, because we're in a transition period of where most of the new homes are sold, and we're going to have to start focusing on resales. So we're moving down that direction. And you're going to hear from Ray. He'll give you some updates on facilities. And patrol, I got Dale, our patrol captain, down front here. He's working hard. On the 23rd, he had hosted a pet safety seminar. Those are always well attended. He's reinstated or re-energized what we call the 1A shift. The 1A shift is an extra patroller we bring on to monitor speed and stop sign citations, and we a lot of times focus in the safety areas. So Dale's got that set up now. And finally, patrol assists in many, many other things, such as the Arts and Crafts Fair, Community Outreach Food Drive, Senior Village, the electronic recycle event. So Dale keeps busy every day. So, and finally, just to wrap things up, I got a couple more points here. Again, you heard me mention the strat plan, and we're busy aligning with the strat plan, aligning with the committees, aligning with the board on supporting that strat plan. So that's keeping us pretty busy. And finally, I want to address the credit card fee. Last board meeting, I presented to the board request to implement the credit card fee. That was approved. And so the credit card fee will be implemented on the 1st of March. Now, the way to get around the 3.5% on using a credit card is to use your member card. And in all areas that you can use your member card, if you can do so, that would be great. Now, there's a couple areas where you can't use your member card, and that's usually when you're buying event tickets and a couple other areas. And in those areas where you don't have that option, then that 3.5% will not be charged if you use the credit card. So, because you don't have the option to use your member card. So, 1st of March, you'll see little signs out by the registers and in the restaurant that say that you're going to have a 3.5% on if you use a credit card. And that's all I have, Matt.
Thank you, Walter. Is Ray coming up next? Here, Ray.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to provide you with an update on some of the projects that we have undergoing. Some of those are 2023 carryover projects, and then some 24 projects that we're kicking off. Before I do that, I've asked Michael to join us. He is our Common Area Director, and he's doing some exciting things, and I've asked him to present some of those things for you.
Good morning. So since I've taken over in October, one of the main goals that they've asked me to get done was level 5 behind the walls and along the golf courses. We have since combined level 4 and level 5 together, and we have increased in those areas. We are marking, I don't know where my slide is, but we are marking the plants that we are keeping, and we are trimming everything and getting everything done. We are in the preserves right now. We have finished up Unit 45. We are currently about a third between Unit 42, 43, and 44. And the reason it is, yes, we are behind, according to my schedule, about 2.5 weeks. That is due to the fact of weather, which we can't control, and we are going, in some of the areas, we are going beyond the 35 feet. We are actually going to the rough in some of these areas along the golf course. This is an after picture of what it's looking like after we're done. We are overseeding with wildflowers, so you should start seeing that as the spring and summer rains come. We're also doing some things in drainage control. We had just finished a huge project off of Desert Bluff up behind in the Loma Serena, what I call Loma Serena, which is behind the Desert Bluff on the east side. We went up there, as you can see in the before pictures, we had huge crevices coming down and hitting the walls behind these houses. So what we did is we came up above and we created a more natural way of being able to control the water and to control the sediment going down and hitting these walls. And we have created dams. I've taught my crews how to create sediment basins, dams, use of the water and the rock so that they can, and to control the velocity so that we can maintain these areas a lot more efficiently. If you have any other questions, you can always get a hold of me. Please be courteous to my crew. My crew has a job. If you have any questions, contact me. Do not contact my crews. Thank you.
Michael? Michael, thank you very much. I appreciate you and all the good things that you're doing. Appreciate that. All right, 2023 carryover projects. Oh, first, sorry. I want to talk about the unplanned project that we had recently, which was the Overlook Drive road failure, otherwise known as the big sinkhole. So we hired Eagle Rock Landscaping, Excavating to come in and deal with that situation. So I want you to know that they exposed all of the utilities in that area, spanning about 150 feet long. There were no leaks. So what does that mean? That means that it's probably groundwater from all the rain that we had, and that area is just saturated. The water is going to follow the weak spot, which is the area over the sewer line. That collapsed about 4 or 5 feet. And what you can see in these photos is that it's the repair is completed using a what they call a half-sack slurry. It is mostly sand. There is some concrete in it to harden just a bit. If we do have an issue in that area, it can be removed, but it'll provide stability there. That doesn't guarantee it won't crop up somewhere else in that area, but for now, Overlook Drive is reopened, and we're pleased that that's behind us. Next slide. Carryover projects. Just yesterday, we had 3 HVAC units installed, 2 of them here at Desert View and 1 at the preserve. So that supply chain is freeing up a bit. You may recall me mentioning previously that that contract for those units was done in March of 2023. So we're catching up. We have bids out for 4 more units in 2024. So that's a comprehensive 5-year plan for replacement of all of our equipment. And as you see here, we've completed all but 9 of those. Those 9 units are original units with R22 refrigerant in them. So they've lasted a long time. That's good news, but they will be replaced in the next couple of years. All right, next slide, please. We are continuing to, let's say, refresh our golf course at Mountain View with some paint on the cabinetry that's used there for the golf shop. It's painted a light, modern, if you will, color, as opposed to the wood, everything wood framed. So a little bit of an update there. Next slide. Again, 2024 projects. We have an RFP complete for the additional 4 units. It's out for bid. We will get 3 bids. Typically, we take the lowest bid in this case. For HVAC units, they're package units. There's not much science or engineering involved. They're package units and they replace the existing ones. Sport court resurfacing will be done here at Desert View. So the 4 tennis courts and the sport court. Comprehensive wall repair. Again, I've mentioned this in the last board meeting. We're focusing on Unit 48 this year. If there is additional funds available, we will move to Unit 14, 15, and 17. What else? Roads. So we have our road study back now, and Walter and I are reviewing that. We are going to mill and pave units 27 and 29. And we'll also do our normal crack seal and seal coat on a rotational basis. And then finally, the CIF project, where we're planning to install solar heating on the Mountain View pool. We have the RFP complete. We have 2 bids or 2 quotes in our hands, and we'll be making those decisions shortly and getting that installed. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Terry Dempsey, our Director of Finance, will now provide us with the finance update.
Hi, good morning. Welcome, Monica. Some of the things that you're going to present, we've already incorporated into our financial system and doing the metrics and things of that nature. So, with that, the first slide is going to be our cash. So we're doing cash. Our operating cash is at $6.3 million. We just had our first 2024 dues payment, was made in January, so it always increases our cash. Reserve cash is $5.4 million at the moment at January. 2024 reserve expenditures are budgeted for $3.6 million, so it'll eat into that quickly. CIF cash is $1.3 million, so a total of $13,195,000. Again, that is unusually high. It's January, so we're going to have the payments coming in, and then July goes up high again due to when annual payment or biannual payments come in. Next slide. Sorry, that comes up a lot smaller than it does on my computer, so I apologize for that. But The January net income before depreciation was a positive $72,988. Was close to budget. We were off by budget by about $692. Restaurants were worse than budget by about $22,000. January golf had a $77,000 worse than budget, with only 9 holes of Mountain View open until April 2024. Fitness had a subsidy of $3,000 and was worse than budget by about $4,000, and I'll discuss that in a minute. Theater and lifestyle combined had a net income of $5,000, was better than budget by $8,000. Overall, our revenue for all the amenities was the revenue was about $200,000 short of budget for January. So need to get out there and use the restaurants and such. Okay, so restaurant revenue is worse than budget by next slide, please. Sorry. So this is the amenity revenue. Restaurant revenue was worse than budget by 12.8%. Weather in January kept people at home. The Democratic dinner fell in February as opposed to January where it was budgeted, and year-to-date is expected to catch up. Golf, you see, is worse than budget by 34%. Golf revenue is worse than budget by 34%. This is due to Mountain View's closure until April, and frost and snow delays at Preserve hampered their revenue as well. Lifestyle is worse than budget by about 53%, but doesn't usually generate big revenue dollars, so that's not too unusual. Theater is worse than budget by 28%. Theater had 2 shows that were bumped, 1 canceled, and 1 moved to a later date. The 4 shows that they did have had averaged attendance of 342, which is, I think 350 is what's budgeted, so a good amount. When we do the 2025 budgeting, we'll take this into account and make sure we plan properly, because when there's New Year's Eve and there's Christmas and all the holidays, so it might be a little aggressive to have too many events in January when people are just kind of calming down and getting back into town. Fitness is worse than budget by 18%, but they report they are actually at capacity for users. We did discover a flaw in how the revenue is recorded for fitness, and we will address it in the future financial statements. And basically that means that the gross revenue was budgeted, and it should have been net revenue. So net is basically gross revenue less any discounts for using passes that get used. So we're going to fix that as we're moving forward. Next slide. So this is one of the things that Monica taught us, is wages as a percent of revenue. So we're starting to use that as a metric, and this new metric we are using, thanks to Real Foods and Troon, we can see how we are managing our wages against revenue. For January, we see the actual is greater than budget for all departments except for theater. This will be more useful as the year unfolds and we can do comparisons month over month. Okay, next. Operating expenses for January. Operating expenses are basically what keeps the property functioning and in order and clean. All of these are under or near budget for January. Again, this will fluctuate as the year progresses, and things will move up and down just based on the spending and what needs to be put into process. Okay. Next one. Again, I apologize for the size of this. I'll have to work with IT on doing this a little bit better. We rolled out a new metric in January, which is prime cost. And this is, again, another metric that was brought to us by Monica and her team. And it was the suggestion of Real Foods that we did this. Prime cost is the cost of sales plus the wages plus burden. And we take that total as a percentage of our revenue. Restaurants' combined cost is 107%, and usually private industry averages around 90 to 105%. So we have a little bit of work to do there as far as prime cost goes. Overall, you notice that the restaurants has a subsidy of $56,000 on a budget of $34,000. Next slide, please. This is Mountain View. So Mountain View revenue was $30,000 less than budget. Mountain View had their prime cost was 103%, so within the private industry average. And Mountain View had a subsidy of $29,000 against a budget of a subsidy of $17,000. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is Preserve and how they did in January. Preserve revenue was down about $13,000 less than budget. Their prime cost was 117%, and Preserve had a subsidy of $27,000. And they had a budget of 17, so they missed by about $10,000. The next slide. So the next slide shows us our cost of goods against January against year-to-date for 2023. Mountain View had a cost of goods of $36,000 or 36% for January, and at the end of the year for 2023 it was 35.25%, so pretty close. Preserve January COGS, food costs, basically jumped up to 54%. It was running about 46% in 2023. Right now we know this is excessive, and we're taking a look at it. We think maybe there was a inventory error. There was a new person doing the inventory in January, so there may be an error in there. So we have David's checking that out for us, and then we'll report back on that when we find out what that was. Next slide. All right, so getting into golf. Combined golf revenue is $142,000 less than budget. We're applying prime costs. I don't necessarily know that translates for golf, but they do have COGS and operating expenses and such. So we're going to go ahead and use that, and it's a metric that we can measure against. So we'll try to use that. So their prime cost was 61.5%, but it was budgeted at 48.2%. The total subsidy for both golf courses was $98,000 for January. If you go to next slide, please. All right, so Mountain View missed budgeted revenue by about $111,000 and had prime costs of 47.5%, which was close to what was budgeted. And Mountain View's subsidy was $34,000. Mountain View's front nine is still closed until April, as we know. And this extended closure was not incorporated into the budget, so we're going to miss budget for the next 2 months at least on that. Okay, next slide is Preserve Golf. And Preserve Golf revenue was less than budget by $30,000 and had a prime cost of 73.5%. Wages and burden were mostly the cause of the prime cost being higher than budget. And Preserve had a subsidy of $64,000 in January. Preserve had snow closures, several frost delays because of the weather in January. So that's a wrap up of the financials for January, and all this information can be found on the HOA2 website under governance, policies, financial reports. That's how you would find it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Terry, for that update. It's now my pleasure to introduce you to Monica Fedry. As I told you earlier, she's the Associate Project Manager for Strategy and Operation at Real Foods Hospitality. There hasn't been any interest in food and beverage here for the last 14 months I've served on the board. So we thought we would go out and get some professional eyes into our operation so we could understand from a professional's point of view what we're doing well and maybe what we're not doing well. And so 3 weeks ago, I think it was 3 weeks ago, Chuck and I sat in on Monica's presentation to Walter and the staff. And I asked her in that presentation if she'd be willing to drive down here. She lives in Cave Creek, north of Scottsdale. And I asked her if she'd be willing to drive down here to do this presentation for the entire board and for you all. And she gratefully accepted my invitation. And it's with great pleasure that I introduce you to Monica.
All right, good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you, Matt, and the entire board for inviting me to be here. I really appreciate that. Just to give you a little background on who I am, I represent 2 companies. The first, I'm coming to you from Real Food, which is a hospitality strategy and design firm based out of Boston, Massachusetts. It is a subsidiary now of Troon. And so within that, I've worked for Troon for about 8 years, and I have a small portfolio of clubs that I provide strategic corporate food and beverage oversight to, and worked across our portfolio since that time. And then I've joined the Real Food team about 2 years ago or so. And with that, prior to both of these companies, I worked in food and beverage with high volume destination luxury resorts in Hawaii. So I've kind of seen a little bit of every part of the business, if you will. And my goal for you all today is to maybe take away some key insights into how the environment that we're operating under today is a little bit different than a commercial establishment. So if we start off on the first slide, my first goal is here to set the stage for what 2024 looks like in the food service industry. If I can have the next slide, please.
Joe, wake Rick.
This is the buildup and anticipation for what's to come. Okay, well, as they're figuring that out, I'll explain a little bit more. So, sales within food service, and that ranges from everything from quick service and your fast food to your high-end fine dining restaurants and everything in between. Forecasted sales for 2024 is expected to reach $1 trillion. So you can just grasp that in your mind. The amount of money that this sector is taking in our economy is huge, right? And I say that. Walter provided us with some jobs insight as for a turnover. Everything that I'm presenting to you right now comes from the National Restaurant Association. They are the main player in data research and providing insights and trends for everything that food and beverage does within the country. So that's where I'm getting this information from. Jobs are expected to grow by 200,000 to reach a total of 15.7 million jobs nationwide. 45% of operators are saying that we need more employees to meet customer demand. And I bring that up because that's key to what Walter said, right? It plays hand in hand to turnover. And it directly impacts how we can compete within the market in our club environment, right? So when we talk about wages here shortly, we talk about turnover, we're all fighting for the same employees. We need more employees within the nation, and they're not necessarily growing, right? If you all remember a few years ago, food service took a major hit. Many restaurants shut down, operators had to scale back, and a lot of people took that opportunity to leave the market, and they looked for jobs in other things, in other areas, in other sectors. A lot of remote work started happening. So even though the jobs have expanded over the last couple of years and increased, we don't necessarily see the same amount of demand or people coming in willing to accept those jobs. One slide back. There we go. Okay. So with that, costs are rising, right? So 98% of operators note that there's higher labor costs, and we've seen this now trending for the last 3 years, and we don't necessarily see this stopping. So with turnover, that's what people are leaving for. They get $1 extra an hour raise somewhere else, they're going to leave that job and they're going to take it. I've seen multiple reports come out just recently that even there's a shift in generations and how they perceive working with employers now. There's a lot less loyalty within the workforce as a whole, and people are more willing to just job hop in order to either get the next promotion, the next title, more fringe benefits, and higher wages, right? So we're stuck right in that trying to make our employees happy, and often they are demanding higher wages and we're expected to accommodate that. 97% cite higher food costs. So we saw that just as Terry mentioned here as well, we're going through some food cost things, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we come along. And 38% said that their restaurant was not profitable in 2023, right? And again, this is industry as a whole, so we have a lot of single independent operators and we have a lot of multi-franchise major corporations within that mix. Consumers are still value conscious, and nearly half of them are saying that they're taking a wait and see approach. And what that means is they're waiting to compare who has the best promotion, who has the best happy hour, who has the best event pricing, right? And so they're not necessarily going out and booking reservations for their favorite restaurant anymore, the best restaurant anymore. They're gonna hold back and they're gonna make those decisions maybe the day before, the day of, depending on what they feel and what they feel like spending for that evening out. And then the last note here that I have is that consumers still love restaurants. 9 out of 10 people still actively enjoy going out to eat. And the key fact here is that they look for meals that they can't produce or replicate at home. And I'm certainly one of those, right? If I can make a spaghetti and meatballs, for example, I'm probably not gonna go out and buy that. And the interesting fact that we're also seeing, this is almost a direct rebuttal, is that people often seek comfort food, right? The familiarity, the approachability, something that resonates, that maybe is a little bit nostalgic, that they get excited for. So again, those are two competing taste preferences. So next slide. So what I wanted to do now is talk a little bit about SaddleBrooke, right, in the state of where we're at here. And we put together a score analysis, which is another term for a SWOT analysis, right? And so I'd like to introduce some of the strengths that we found. First off, the community as a whole has been rated by the Arizona Daily Star for the past 6 years running as the best retirement community in the state, right? So that's something to be proud of. That's something that we can take into consideration. We can start to program, right? But we really see that as underlying. There's a strong sentiment here, and it's been recognized statewide. The amount of amenities and the variety of amenities that SaddleBrooke has is very unique, and it's very vast. And I will say, this is the first time that I've actually been to a semi-private community that has a theater with a stage, with the AV and the technology that you all do. This is truly special, right? So this is pretty cool, and it just reflects what you all say is something that you feel proud of and that you really like to see. And it's great to see that you've had a lot of amenities and things exposed to you, because it's not very common within this type of environment. You have tons of passionate and tenured food and beverage staff. And so Walter noted it, when we have lower turnover in this industry, it's because they feel good about coming to work. They've made a lot of relationships and built rapport with a lot of people sitting in this room, and that's what keeps them here. Right, so there's certainly things that we do from a compensation standpoint, but the alternative that makes people stick around is because they like working with each other, and they like who they're serving on a day-to-day basis. So that's definitely a strength we don't always see. And then the last one we want to point out is that the board understands that there's a complexity to this business, right? And that they've reached out to us to help them navigate and draft a plan to help us reach the goals going forward. A few of the challenges we want to point out: the demographic within the club, the member demographic in the club is changing, right? And I say that because this is a fairly, this community has been around for a while, right? It's been developed maybe 20 years ago or so. And there's a shift. And as the preserve home sites are now still under construction and still being built, there's a different buyer that's coming into the community than there was about 20 years ago. And so with that, there are now competing or different changes in preferences, and specifically as it relates to dining. And so that's not uncommon to see. We see this across the country, especially the couple years that we've seen some enormous pricing increases and fluctuations in different regions within the US. That's really changed up the mix of a lot of our communities. And that's a challenge because from a programming standpoint, from how do we satisfy different people's needs and preferences, how do they use the facilities, when do they use the facilities, right? That's just something that the operators have to take into consideration. We also heard that the members at HOA 2 constantly compare to the offerings and services of HOA 1. And that's a challenge because they're two different operating environments for one, and they're not necessarily an apples to apples, right? And so that puts the team here at kind of a disadvantage because they already know that you might go in and be dissatisfied knowing that you just had a similar experience at HOA 1, maybe at a little bit of reduced price. So that's something that we noted. The fact that the club's restaurants here are open to the public is a challenge, and we say this because there's a perception oftentimes by community residents that think, the public is going to help drive revenue and bring more profitability down to the bottom. And really in this case, it's a moot point. It's not doing anything. It's not necessarily detracting anything, and it's not necessarily bringing anyone in here. Talk a little bit about location for your community. 20 years ago, there was not much around. But now Tucson has kind of expanded. There's been a lot of other developments going on. Now there's more competition, and it's easier for people to get around some of those. So when we say that the public offering doesn't necessarily entice or detract, it's just kind of there. And then finally, the last thing we noted was Mountain View Clubhouse has excess capacity for a la carte dining. And a la carte dining is just daily dining, right? When you go into the restaurant for lunch or dinner. The challenge is that it doesn't necessarily have enough space to attract people or non-members or non-residents that want to host a private event here, right? So while you do have some beautiful banquet facilities over there, they're appropriate for the community here. They may not attract, a corporation down out of Tucson that wants to bring their whole team up to enjoy for the day. Just not large enough to accommodate. I think roughly we can get about 120 or so in Mountain View, dining room specifically, which is a good size, right? But a lot of times when you're looking at hosting company events, they're looking at 200 people or plus. Next slide, please. So some of our opportunities, and we noted these, and I want to just preface saying that we may or may not use them in how we draft our strategy going forward. But some of the opportunities that we did say is the ability to leverage and personalize the dining experience for all of you every time you step into either Mountain View or the Preserve. And what we do have within a private dining community is the fact that we have a lot of data on our members and who's using it, right? This is a key differentiator to our space and our operation versus a commercial restaurant who doesn't necessarily know anything about you. So what we're talking with the team is how do we use North Star and how do we use the member profiles to capture what you like and what you don't like and what table you like sitting at, or maybe what your favorite wine is, right? And start to anticipate and really create some personalized experiences when you come in without having to ask, right? That's the surprise and delight, and that's one opportunity that we see in the private club space that we can really capitalize on. Some other ideas are we think that we can tailor the core offerings and services to reflect the majority of the membership here. And we did a deep dive analysis into the member demographics, right? We looked at where people came from, Midwest, from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast and everything in between, and we kind of grouped everyone together, right? And why we did that was because there are some noteworthy differences in how people eat and their dietary preferences and nutritional preferences. And so if you bear with me, right, as food and beverage, we hear a lot of the same things a lot. We want variety, we want healthy menu options, and we want comfort. But that's not the same if you are someone that came from the Midwest versus California versus the Northeast, right? And so our operations team takes all of that information and they're trying to appease one group, but then the other group is left dissatisfied. So what we're suggesting is, why don't we tailor our offerings to represent the majority, and then we can add in specials and we can add in different programming nights, theme nights to reflect the other groups. Another idea is we can look towards ancillary service offerings to maximize capture. And I'm throwing this out here, is to leverage the theater. The theater came up in the member survey as the most, you're most prideful of, you really like it. There's a lot of positive feedback about this building in particular. So how can we perhaps, incorporate food and beverage a little bit more to provide a more robust experience for some of those events that happen here? And then leveraging non-member event business, right? So again, so we're working through the board on some of these things. If you want to really move the needle on the bottom line, it's really to open up and drive business on the outside. So that's when we can offer retail rates. We can do that so in volume, and that's where we start to realize some efficiencies. And finally, a few risks that we just want to call out. We understand there's a temporary agreement between the two HOAs, right? This one and HOA 1. Whether or not that changes over the next couple years, that could influence or factor into how your amenities are utilized. And so it's just something that we need to be aware of and potentially start to plan for and program in the future. The current service offerings we talked about, we'll make sure that those are reflective of everyone as part of the community. And then the last one here is ensuring that the offerings are always 100% reflective of the membership's desires is quite difficult as an operator, right? We try hard, we're never gonna get it 100% perfect, but that's what they're striving for. Now, if you can imagine having 3,000 people tell you about what they want and how they want their steak cooked and how they like their burger or how their grandma used to make the lasagna, that's a lot. That's a lot to manage. Next slide, please. Okay, so one of the things we looked at from the board in the private club space, there's essentially two operating strategies that you have to choose from. One is a dues strategies, and the thought here is we're providing, significantly higher dues, which is to subsidize your food and beverage amenity, right? The other option is to have lower dues and make up for it with lower margins in food and beverage, right? So you're covering the expenses by coming into the restaurant more often, dining more, using these venues more frequently, perhaps slightly higher menu prices and so forth. So those are the two strategies that we see in this environment. Neither one are better than the other, right? So this is a very specific decision that makes sense for the residents within that unique community. What you're operating under right now is the margin strategy. So we do want to call out some of the risks to this strategy, and one is with the value perception. The value perception is hard, right? Because you all go out to the restaurants, we go to the grocery store, we've seen the increases in prices there, and then we expect our clubs to be able to offer a better price, and that's just not necessarily the case all the time. And so our value perception is at risk here because we feel like we're not necessarily getting more for the money that we're putting out, right? We realize that. There's the approach of offering more. So oftentimes we hear, well, why don't we open back up often on the links, or why don't we have beverage cart service, or why don't we open Mountain View for longer hours? Why aren't we open on Saturday night, for example? Oftentimes that doesn't necessarily realize anything more than added cost, and labor being the prime factor. So that's certainly a risk as people oftentimes think do more. Do more doesn't necessarily produce more, it actually produces less. And we'll go to the next slide. So here's a little bit more about where we are within the private club space and why it's difficult to win on this margin strategy. And one, we often hear, well, in the private club space, we don't actually have overhead within our food and beverage P&L, which you saw from Terry, which is true, right? So why can't we make a profit here when the commercial restaurants do turn a profit and they do have overhead to account for? And one of that comes for this first bullet point here is in the club world, we have a finite number of diners, of people that are willing to eat. So we can't expect everyone to come 3 meals a day, every single day of the week. That's unrealistic. In the public sector, they have a much bigger audience to pull from, right? I think the average population right now in Tucson hovers right around $540,000 or 40,000 people. And that fluctuates depending on seasonality, right? That can double, maybe almost, and it can double over the course of the year right now, and then it'll also take a dive during the summertime. We realize that. However, it's just constantly a bigger pool. Within our environment here, if we have a couple thousand people, that's a very small fraction of what the total population is. And we also understand that people have favorite restaurants outside of the community that you like to go to. Again, right, so there's increased competition here. Our club events are often priced within the club world lower, right? We're trying to satisfy you on value than the outside offerings. And one very recent example was Valentine's Day. One of your restaurants offered a $45 prefix menu as a multi-course. When we compared what else was being offered outside of the community, we saw a range from $65 up to $150, depending on the location and what they were offering. But that just shows you, right, even if we take the lowest end, we're still undercutting that by $20. Alcohol pour sizes in the club space are usually double than what you're going to find if you go to a restaurant or a bar. Most restaurants and bars use jiggers to measure very specific amounts of alcohol that are being poured into each of those cocktails that you're drinking. In our space, you'll probably see your bartender free pouring, right? And again, that's really playing to the value perception to make sure that you all are getting the value that you feel that you're entitled to because you live here and you pay dues and you want to come and enjoy your facilities and not be nickeled and dimed, right? But that's just a major comparison when we see alcohol from a cost perspective. We usually run in the 30% in the private club space. If a high volume resort or commercial restaurant, you're anywhere from 15% to 22%. Along the similar lines, when we talk about labor. Our labor environment, we usually retain and we try to keep people year round, even though that there might be a slight change in demand on how our restaurants are used by the membership over the course of the year. And so we do that to retain our staff. Right, there's a couple of notes that Walter made on recruiting. There's a high cost of recruiting, right? It costs the club a lot of money every time we hire somebody new. In food and beverage, we've seen that number from an industry average cost an employer about $15,000 every time they turn over an employee, right? So it's our goal, even if we have to pay our chefs or our management team a little bit more and keep them on full year round, that in the long term, that should actually be, it's a better strategy as we can keep those costs more stable. And then the last bullet point here is about inventory metrics. And I know that there's probably some of you that have worked in retail or other operations that have tight controls over inventory. We have larger inventories, which means that we have larger inventory values in things sitting on our shelves. And that's the reason for that is because we need to be able to provide meals for people with a broad range of tastes and preferences, right? There might be a handful of members that really like a particular beer, and we bring in that beer just so that when they come into the bar, they know that they're gonna have their favorite beer at the bar. Commercial restaurant's not gonna do that. Here's their menu, this is what they're going to offer, you take it or leave it. Right, so our inventory values within the private club space are just not comparable to what we would find in a normal or commercial environment. Next slide, please. Okay, so we talked a little bit about operational costs. They're at an all-time high industry-wide, right? We're seeing that reflective of your budgets now, and that's one of the things that we're trying to do to really help develop a story and an operating strategy that makes sense to you all. Food costs, they're constantly fluctuating. We heard that from a couple of the other speakers today talk about costs relative to theirs. The supply chain as it relates to your construction is still behind, and that's the same for food and beverage. Within the food and beverage space, where also weather plays a factor, right? Farming is a huge thing. California wildfires greatly affect Arizona produce, right? So all of those things are constantly fluctuating the prices within this space. Talked about the large inventories, and then our menu pricing strategies within the club space are intentionally priced lower than in the commercial space. I'll give you an example right now. We're seeing some of the quick service fast food restaurants, I actually think it's McDonald's, that's offering their meal is now $18, right? When it used to be sub $10 and $5 before that, and people are kind of outraged, right? So when we look at that, an $18 value meal in McDonald's, and we look at what our burger is here is probably close to $14, $15, there's already a savings disadvantage or advantage, but at the same time, there's gonna be a cost associated with that somewhere else, right? Because we have not been able to magically improve our labor costs or prime costs, as Terry noted, And so that's kind of what's driving that, right? We really want to make sure that our members feel valued. Talked about the labor shortages, so I don't think we need to go into that anymore. And then the changing member demographics come with different preferences, and we talked about that. There's a perception out there of what fine dining means, what casual dining means, what healthy dining means, and we all try to do the best that we can to uncover what that means to you all, right? So does fine dining to you mean a linen tablecloth and multiple courses and a bread service that comes at the very beginning? Or does it mean that the standards and the execution and the service that you're receiving is at a higher quality, right? It's personable, people are anticipating your needs in the same manner. And so oftentimes we try to dissect and really understand what these core phrases mean in our membership, because they don't necessarily always translate the same as it might in a public space. So next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going well here at SaddleBrooke Two. One thing that I think everyone on the stage can agree with is that the leadership team in food and beverage is very strong. They're doing an excellent job. Their approach to satisfy members is paramount. And they're also being tied onto maintaining the proper, appropriate club finance balances, right? So they're stuck in a place, but right now they're doing a really good job. And one of the things that we'd like to note is the decision before we even came on was to close the Mesquite Grill, is that right? And shift operations into Mountain View. And why I bring that up is because this is a prime example of reducing redundancies, and they're really taking an operational maximalism approach by consolidating those two things. So we didn't take a service away. You still have an opportunity to purchase food and beverage within the golf shop now. But at the same time, on the back end, the culinary team was able to scale back, right? They can now shift their core team to focus on prep and production during the peak service hours for people that are coming into Mountain View. And so that's an example of one of the things that they're doing behind the scenes and a reason that you might see an operational change come in. The other thing is that the food and beverage team is doing a great job with offering multiple activities and things for the membership to get involved with and come and participate in. So those it's very active. Michelle does a great job doing that, keeping them fresh and keeping it new, trying to come up with new ideas for things that people might be interested in and want to come and take advantage of. So I think that's noteworthy here to bring up. Also wanted to say that your online reviews for the restaurants are favorable. And when we did our online presence report, we found that, Open Table scores are over 2 out of 5 stars, over 4 out of 5 stars, which is excellent. We don't necessarily see that very often, and this is something to really be proud of. We also brought this up because there's usually a discrepancy between our Open Table, our daily dining reports, and that of the member survey, right? So you might recall the member survey results are a little bit lower, and this is not uncommon that we see a variance in these two things. And oftentimes, people have not necessarily given the restaurant a new or recent visit, and so they might be prejudging with something that happened years past. And so oftentimes in our world from food and beverage, we strongly advocate for our food and beverage teams to implement some type of daily dining. And we do this because we want to capture the sentiments of the people that are actually coming into the facilities, right? And so then we can showcase and we have some momentum gaining, right? You have some really great scores within Open Table. Open Table is your online reservation system. You all might get an email survey request after you go and dine at either the Preserve or Mountain View, and that's where the score is coming from. We also think and heard that the Preserve is a desirable place to go and eat and spend your time. And we agree, right? We think that it's a special location. You have some gorgeous mountain views back there. It's a little bit more intimate. It feels slightly more like a public restaurant, right? Just the way that it's laid out. And so we see that it's special. We know that members want to go there to host special occasions. They use this as just a place to get away. You might not host a party of 10. You might host a party of 4, 2 to 4, 6. And that's reflective of this space. And so we think that this is a strength and something that's been going well. The team within food and beverage that works at Preserve is also tenured there, right? So they know you. They know the timing, they know the menu, they're able to work on a much smoother flow. than the Mountain View team, who has a slightly newer or younger or even greener team. They have some people that haven't been with the club for as long, right? And so you can see the two differences in service style and how that translates. And then finally, I do want to note that the 2023 food and beverage financial performance, we say is reflective of the operating environment. And what we mean by that is, you know, we get the question a lot on how do we compare to all the other private clubs within the state and across the country? And our answer to that is we can't compare. So a club environment is quite different. It's unique. There's a specific strategy that's created, which your board is now working towards, and the operating model reflects that strategy. So when we say that your operating environment and the financial results were basically in line for last year, right? And so now the task is for us to understand, what do you want to do? What do you want to be going forward? And we can help you create a model to support that financial objective. And next slide, please. So I want to just close by giving, these are some thought-provoking things, right? So as we're coming up and working alongside the operations team and the board and Terry on how we're going to put this plan together, these are some of the things that we might come to look at. First, starting with a menu analysis, right? This is something that is standard across the industry. A menu analysis gives a deep dive into what sells, what doesn't sell, what's selling with a high margin and what's selling with a low margin, and it gives us a mix of all that data. And then we can start to make changes based on data, right? So we really use data to drive the decisions, and then support that with what we hear from comments. We plan to optimize the food and beverage ecosystem with hours of operation that align with demand. And so there's a lot of words on this, but basically what the F&B ecosystem is to us is the entire community and where food and beverage is activated and how it's offered, right? So instead of solely looking at Mountain View and then solely looking at the preserve, we want to look at those things together as well as everything else, like your events here. What does the links do and how does that support? And again, the reason for that is because when we talked about, we have a finite number of people that are going to dine and eat here. We can't just say we're going to open everything for breakfast 7 days a week, knowing that we don't have enough people to support each of those operations sustainably, right? So when we look at the ecosystem, we look at who's coming to each of those locations and when. And so our plan is to really make sure that we have operational hours that are applicable to the most demand. And then a couple other things are, you know, from a marketing standpoint, really strengthen the member engagement for a la carte dining, because a la carte dining is really what sustains the operation, right? So if you all say that you want to come here and you want to eat lunch every day of the week, then we can put a plan together to do that. But as soon as we don't see people coming out to support the lunch, that's when we have to start scaling back the operation, right? And so those are how those two things work. We look at the data, and then we put a plan into place based on what we've heard and what we've looked at through a lot of the surveys, and then we'll create an offering around that. But marketing is there to really help drive all those changes and just communicate more proactively on a regular basis with you all about what food and beverage is doing, right? So the more that you know, the more that you have the ability to plan and take advantage of some of the different services. Maybe you come out and try a new special of the week or the night, and then that shows the support and that we're doing things the right way. And then the last thing that Terry kind of alluded to already is we're trying to achieve a reduction in prime cost and those target metrics, right? And our prime costs from an operator standpoint are things that we have direct control of. So while your maintenance team was out here and saying we don't have any control of the weather, that really deterred people from coming and utilizing the clubhouse during January, that's the same for food and beverage. But what they can do is that they can flex and they can change their operational hours when they see those things happen, right? So if it's raining outside, we know that historically that means that we don't necessarily see the same number of traffic for diners for dinner. Then we'll start to cut our staff. We'll stop prepping as much food in the back of the house as well. And so those are the two prime costs that are in direct control for our leaders. And with that, it's about all I have to share today, but I open the floor to any questions if you have at this time.
Monica, I'm going to address that to the board.
Okay.
You have any questions for Monica at this point? Monica's going to stay with us, so when we get to the Q&A period, if you have questions for her, we'll take them. Thank you
All right,
very
thank you.
much for that presentation. Appreciate you. I needed an underwear adjustment period. Dan Lineker is going to talk to us next.
Am I on? Good, thank you. Okay, we'll go to the next first slide if I can. I'm going to give you an update of a report we got back from Troon on the preserve golf course. Let me remind you that in July of 2023, Troon took over the portfolio of managed golf courses from Club Corp, and our contract converted to a Troon contract, and we now have Troon managing our 2 golf courses. And there's a huge benefit of that that we've seen really starting in July 1. Troon are the #1 golf course management company in the world. They manage roughly 900 golf courses across the world. They are incredibly valuable when it comes to agronomy and when it comes to course construction. We didn't use them with Mountain View because we had already started down that path before they were there. Where we use them in the future, don't know, be future board's decision, but we're using them now to support us from an agronomy and a construction perspective, at least on the estimate side. When they first came here, they toured our golf courses, thought they were great structures and bones of a great golf course, both Mountain View and the preserve. We asked them to confirm what they thought those main components of these golf courses looked like, specifically at the preserve, in terms of useful life. They told us that. They actually gave us estimates of what they thought those cost components would be that we could be able to use in our reserve planning, and that's where the $9 million at the preserve number kind of comes from. That from Troon, as well as the architect that we had used, he gave us an estimate as well. So that kind of confirmed the $9 million. We asked them, or the board asked them, to come back and give us a written document that reviewed the main components of that preserve golf course. And that was last fall. They were able to get that accomplished after the first of the year. This letter, which was available, I don't know, I hope they had enough copies of it at when you came in the main doors at the table out there. This letter is the culmination of that, and that's what we're going to talk about real quickly this morning. I won't be able to go into as much detail as I was like. I don't expect you to read what you see there. That's something you'll be able to read. I'm going to send out a confirmation email after this meeting that will have this letter in it as well as the presentation. So I'll just bite some time for just a little bit and I'll take you through all this process. But again, we asked them to come in. They did that. This is their report. Next slide, please. The letter is dated February 17th, and the main course components we wanted to have their opinion about was the greens, the tee decks, the tee off areas, the bunkers, the irrigation system, and the drainage improvement area. What's going on with the drainage on that golf course? If you know much about golf, it's really a lot about water on, water off. That's how golf courses exist, and drainage is very, very important. They also included, and you'll see this, if again it was back on the table, they included a United States Golf Association life cycle expectation letter, and that talks about typical life cycles of each one of these components within our golf course and all golf courses. Let me take you to the next slide, and I'll get right to the recommendations that these gentlemen put together. And I'll read this to you because it could be a little bit hard if I can read it myself. While there are a number of other improvements not listed that Troon would recommend be made to improve the overall quality and playability of the preserve golf course, Troon feels that the golf course components described above have reached or exceeded their useful lifespan. In order to prevent the further deterioration of the golf course infrastructure, it is essential that at a minimum, the completion of the recommendations, repairs that are listed, imperative to extend the life and restore the integrity of the preserved golf course. This was written to us by Ron Despain, who is a Senior Vice President of Construction. Jeff Poling is a Vice President, and David Stout, who is a Director of Agronomy. David visits us at this course quite often and works well with Paul Halleck. So they talked about the main components, the greens, the bunkers. Those are the basic things that find their way into our reserve plan. That's what we're talking about in the reserve plan, those components. Let me go to the next slide. I'm going to copy something Matt had put up at the last presentation, last town hall. There's a lot of discussion about need versus want. Everybody, obviously we know we need stuff. Sometimes we want stuff. Well, this conversation is really about, and what they focused on in the letter, is what would be considered the needs of that preserved golf course in the future from a life cycle perspective. And if you look on the left side, which maybe you can see, maybe you can't, all of those needs that they describe are there. What's in the center is should-haves. Like to maybe get to them. Maybe we should consider them a little harder. And to the far right is nice to have stuff that someday could be done. The should-haves are also some days that could be done as well. One of the things I want to bring up to your attention in the should-haves, and we did it at Mountain View, we had a turf reduction program. Mountain View has roughly 85, 88 acres of grass. Sounds like a lot. It is a lot. It is under, the state of Arizona is concerned about water going to golf courses in the future. To save water, they're looking at legislation that may control that. Preserve has 75 acres of grass. So there is a potential. We have budgets considered for turf reduction at the preserve. I think that's a future discussion future boards and future residents will have. I don't think that's a guarantee that that money will be spent at the preserve. We wanted to spend it at Mountain View because we knew we had an extra amount of acreage that was going to probably get involved in state legislation to control water. Mountain View, maybe, maybe not. So I wanted to bring that out. We've talked about turf reduction. It's not a given in terms of the future plans of the reserve, if that goes forward. Next slide. Let me tell you a little bit about project life cycle, what may happen in the future with the preserve, just to give you an understanding. We currently have a master plan. That master plan was developed, I think, 2 years ago, year and a half ago, by Mike Gogol. That plan was paid for by GIF funds, Golf Improvement Funds. It was not paid for by dues. It serves basically, and it's online, you can see it, a lot of people have viewed it. It serves basically as a rendering of the needs and wants. It's not considered by any stretch a final plan, but a guide to plan development. It's the very first thing you would put down on a piece of paper if you were thinking about repairing the golf course at the preserve. What would you do? The pump system replacement could be first and is independent of other work. The pump system is like the golf course. It's 20 plus years old. And we've already gone through, if you have lived here a while, we went through a pump failure at Mountain View. We have 2 pump systems at Mountain View. We have 1 pump system at the preserve. We went through a failure process at Mountain View where luckily the second pump was able to take over while the first pump was repaired over about I'm thinking it was a 2-month period of time it took to get that pump system back up. We only have one pump system at Preserve. There are 4 functioning pumps. It's not, if you get past the first 2, then you're probably in trouble keeping water pressure. But the pump system is also included in our reserves. So we have money in the reserves identified for that system. But that's the first thing on the list. Final course design. If in fact you did repair all these critical components, that final course design is going to take a lot of work by a lot of people. It's going to come from, that final design would come from residents, come from the golf committee, who's very involved, obviously, and also the hope would be a design team made up of residents that would oversee all that, along with Troon. A lot of involvement, a lot of people would be involved in the process to get to a final design. Then after that, the project timeline would be agreed upon at some point in time. Right now, it's in the reserves in 2029. Potentially, it could come to 2027. And the real question of that project timeline would come back to what was discussed for Mountain View. Do you do 9 holes at once over 2 years, 9 holes each year for 2 years, or do you do 18 holes all at once? We took the 18-hole route at Mountain View based on feedback we got from golfers who said they would not renew their annuals over that 2-year period. So it was really a revenue calculation, and I think that same discussion would hold true at the Preserve as well for future boards and future involvement of residents as well. What timeline would you like? So that's a project kind of life cycle, what would happen going forward in terms of repair and replacement of some of these components that are exceeding their life cycle. Having said all this, again, you need to read the letter, you need to look at the USGA thing, have an understanding. These are experts. These are as most experts that you're going to find in golf. Troon is well respected in the golf community, and they influence what's going on in golf and in golf design. So these people live and breathe this work. We wanted to know what they thought, and as part of our contract, this is part of the service they offer to us. So please dive into it if you're interested. It's good stuff, and then you'll be able to see this presentation as well. I wanted to answer a few questions though about golf that have come up. Obviously, we've had a lot of conversation about golf in the last couple of months. So next slide, please. Some people have said, hey, just put an irrigation system in. That's all we need. That's what is past its useful life by the most amount. Let's not worry about the other stuff. Put that in. Well, the problem with doing that, and Troon has told us these same answers that I'll put here as well. The problem is you really kind of need to know where you're going. What am I going to end up with? At some point in time, I'm going to end up with something. At some point in time, I'm going to fix a bunker. At some point in time, I'm going to fix a green or regrass a green. You got to know where you're going to end up with. So if you put an irrigation system in before you know that, all that's going to do is allow you to obviously keep water on the grass you currently have, but at some point in time, you're going to have to come back and rework that system. You're going to put a lot of rework cost into that new irrigation system because you're going to eventually change more things. So doing irrigation by itself, very difficult, not suggested at all by the Troon folks, but I wanted to bring that to the table. Do bunkers and greens a few holes at a time. Let's just bite off 3 or 4 holes a year, and in 3 years or so, or 4 years or so, we'll be done. Be simple stuff. The problem with that is that it has such a significant impact on your revenue. Golfers want to play 18 holes. We know that from Mountain View. We obviously it did not open on time with Mountain View. It was a problem. We've talked through that a lot. So we know that golfers want 18 holes to play, and you cannot sell 15 holes. It's just impossible. So doing things over time, as difficult it is to mobilize construction crews to do that kind of work, it's a very challenging kind of approach to this kind of project. Next slide. All right, this is a good one. Are you making a Pebble Beach golf course? I don't know if you play golf. You know Pebble Beach. It's an incredible golf course right on the water, Northern California. It's just beautiful. I wish we were, but we're not. We're not. That's not the plan here. The reserve planning does not account for the nice to haves. It's not there. It's not in it. It's all the basic issues associated to golf courses. We are not addressing nice to haves in the reserve funding. We're focused the main course components, as I mentioned, as Troon describes. These are basic items in any golf course anywhere in the world. They're all made up with those basic components. Every golf course has them. The next one's always popular, and we hear it. We hear it a lot, obviously. I heard it last at the town hall quite a bit. 70% of us don't play golf. Why do we want to pay for golf? Why are you charging us? Why are you assuming we want to pay for a golf course? We don't play it. Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, golf is the #1 amenity in terms of homeowner use. 70% of our homeowners use it. Those are numbers. In 2022, our pro looked at actual names that played golf on HOA2 property golf courses, Preserve and Mountain View, in 2022. 1,750 people, individual homeowners of HOA2 residents, played golf on our golf courses. That's when you extrapolate out 3,000 homes, there's roughly 5,000 people in those 3,000 homes kind of number. That's where the 70% that don't play and 30% that do play come from. When you look at other amenities, you look at pickleball. Pickleball has 800 members. Wow, that's not 1,700. Softball, what's softball got? 250 members, maybe, something kind of a number, probably. Yeah, it's our #1 used amenity. So everything is going to probably be less than that 30% usage. So we're in this together, and I just kind of wanted to read this. It is highly valued in terms of aiding our home values, golf courses, and is a significant factor in attracting new home buyers. 85% of us who lived here in 2017 were given a choice. Do you want to buy these golf courses at transition? What do you want to do? 85% of us, I lived here during that period of time, I voted for it, approved that purchase, okay? HOA2 is the sum of its collective parts. That's what we are. We're a collection of amenities that help all of us enjoy retirement years. We are the sum of those parts. And this board is committed to maintaining all the amenities at the same level. We've said that. I don't think you're going to find a board that's going to say something different than that in the future. I don't think anybody said that in the past. So anyway, is there another slide? Yeah. There is another slide. I don't have that on my piece of paper here. Oh yeah, okay, this is the bunker. Hang on just a second. You got it? Thank you. All right, I want to get back to the last one. Are you adding cost by adding new bunkers? We've had that question quite a bit. It's a good question. It really, really is a good question. Let me just refer back to what I stated in this answer. It is rare that every bunker is reworked like for like. Some holes require new positions of bunkers to replace eliminated bunkers. The cost of adding a new location versus reshaping and reducing size of existing bunkers in this project. There's 13,000 square feet of new bunkers, which is proposed by the Troon folks. That would account for about $10,000 more dollars than redoing what those bunkers were currently positioned as. So there's about 10 grand in here of moving bunkers to a different location. All bunkers have the same sand, all bunkers have the same liner. It's the moving, so it's $10,000 out of this project of $9 million, but it's not, obviously too significant. What is significant though, and has been suggested and was done at Mountain View as well, is a reduction of overall square footage of bunker size in the preserve project anticipated replacement and repair of the current bunkers. And the master plan suggests that we reduce roughly 13,000 square feet of bunkers, 13,000 square feet taking us from, I believe, 85,000 square feet of bunkers at the preserve down to 73. Oh, whatever that number is. 72, sorry, 72. So that reduction by 13,000, Troon suggest, and is in our numbers, is a cost savings of roughly 105,000 of construction cost. The real cost savings of that is going forward. The daily maintenance of those bunkers, which occurs, then becomes less. And long term, when bunkers need to be replaced, sand needs to be replaced, liners need to be replaced, you have 13,000 square feet of that less than what you started with today. And that was true in Mountain View. Mountain View reduced bunker size by 20,000 square feet. So anyway, those are my quick review. Please read the letter. Like I said, we'll send out an e-blast with, again, the letters on it, the USDA life cycle, as well as this presentation too. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate being able to bring this forward, and I really appreciate Troon's ability to give us this information. These guys have been outstanding as a partner for us in the golf enterprise. So thank you very much.
Denise, do you have a motion?
I do. As liaison to the camp committee, I have 3 candidates for approval to round out this committee. They are Linda Vautrin-Hill, Lori Tooney, and Dennis Lee.
I have a motion to add 3 members to our Common Area Maintenance Committee. Do I have a second? Okay, thank you, Chuck. Any questions to Denise about our three candidates? Do any of our residents want to make a comment about our 3 candidates? Linda Vautrin-Hill, Lori Tunney, and Dennis Lee. Seeing nobody? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Denise. Sean, you have an update for us?
Yes, I do. We did a unanimous written consent among the board members a couple of weeks ago because we have 4 new members of the Architectural Landscape Committee. Kathy Nordine, Grover Ligon, Michael Bursky, and Kurt Waller.
Thank you, Sean. This was very good news for all of us who do work through the ALC. Adding 4 members, about doubled the committee in size. So that was great news. And it's wonderful to see more of our residents stepping up and joining in our committee work. It is very beneficial. We reviewed that this morning. with all of our committee chairmen. The board meets with our committee chairmen each month before this meeting, and had the opportunity to review with them everything our committees had accomplished over the last 14 months. And it was an impressive list. So very grateful for all those people. Last thing I'll share with you before we adjourn and go to your comments are our upcoming events. On Tuesday, March 5th, we will have our next board working meeting. This is to address several issues around the reserve fund. We owe you our final, what we're going to send to you all for vote on. We need to approve the vote itself. We need to approve the ballot. And we'll be taking those challenges on March 5th. On March 12th, a week later, we will have the final reserve fund town hall. That'll be 3 of 3. And then, of course, we'll go to the election process. We will discuss the election process in detail at the March 12th town hall. And our next board meeting will be on March 27th. Same place, same time. And with that, I will adjourn the formal portion of our meeting and then open up for homeowner comments.
Remember, when you come down to the microphone to speak right into the mic, please give us your name, your unit number, and speak loudly and clearly so we can all hear you. Go ahead, please, sir.
Hi, I'm Mike Lewis. I'm Unit 49, Lot 79. You know, I can say this over the last month or two since I've been attending more of the board sessions. I want to tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to learn what is happening. It is, you know, I've kind of been a distant learner, right, where I haven't been actively participating, and now that what's going on with the reserve vote soon to come up, it got my attention. But saying that, Dan, I want to share the other side of the story, maybe about what you were sharing about a couple things. First of all, about the 70-30 percentage. Okay, if someone has children and they happen to be in our community and they're non-golfers, but the children show up and say, you know, I'd kind of like to go out and play 9 holes of golf. And they are listed as an active golfer. That inflates that percentage of the people who play. In reality, one of the things that I've been trying to ask of Matt, when I ask a question about demographics and the metrics, I've been asking really, and I've been saying, I believe active golfers, meaning people that play 2 times or more a month, that's just 2 times a month, would represent less than 10% of our community. So when you talk about the 70-30 thing, I believe that's not accurate. And it misrepresents the support of golf in the community. Okay, the second thing, I want to just point out, when you looked at the financials, up there was $5 or $6 million on our financials that are attached to the name of Alliance Bank. I think the finance director should explain how come $6 million of our money is sitting over in Alliance Bank, and what are we receiving by having it parked there?
Hi, my name is John Sohikian. I'm in Unit 77, Lot 45. So I got a lot here. I'm just going to start running through them. Number one, we've already spent $7 million on the Mountain View course, and we have not allowed that course to come online fully to really see if that money was well spent, to bring golfers back, which is the premise that you have. 2, if you're not a golfer in this community, by fixing up the golf courses, you're not all of a sudden going to be a golfer. So we're looking at $17 million between the 2 courses to renovate both courses. Now, Troon is in the business of renovating courses. They're not going to come here and tell you, you know, the course is great, just do a few things. Another point, if you have a home that's 50 years old and you have a plumbing leak, and a plumber comes over and you have that leak fixed, do you think the plumber's going to say, you know what, you need to change your entire plumbing system? What needs to happen is you need to repair the course as things arise. You talk about lifespan. Lifespan is a theoretical item. You could have 20 years, you could have 30, but you're talking about ripping it all up and redoing it. We have roughly maybe 500 members in our community that are annual golf members. If you sit back and think about $17 million that we're spending on 500 people, because that gentleman who just spoke a moment ago made it very clear that many of the golfers are casual golfers. It's a lot of money, and the whole premise that golf enhances the real estate, I would say maintaining and being prudent with our money is important, but golf in and of itself is not going to improve the real estate values. People come here because of the beauty of the surroundings, and golf is just one of many of the activities. So we're talking also about spending, real quick, $2 million on a renovation of Mountain View's dining facilities. There is a restaurant in Tucson that was named the #1 restaurant in all of America. It's called Tumerico. It is a dive, but people line up to get in because the food is amazing. So if you improve the food, you have theme nights, you have people paid well, you'll get people eat here. But if you're not going to do that, you could spend all the money you want renovating. Renovating doesn't change the fact that it's all about the food and the service. Thank you very much. Vote no.
My name is John I. Colt, Unit 35, Lot 4. And what I want to do, this is my 4th or 5th meeting that I've participated in. I'm well educated, okay? And I said at a previous meeting that I don't want to thank you for your efforts, I want to applaud you for your efforts. The strategic planning. And what I also want to do is I want to encourage you to remain steadfast. I think you folks are visionary. I think you have the best interests of this place at heart. I have full confidence in you, and I want you to remain steadfast. Thank you.
Elaine Taylor, Unit 49. I'm a retired school superintendent, and I have a very clear sense of what the rules are and the guidelines for different meeting types. I know what constitutes a business meeting, an executive meeting, and a work session. But I don't have clarity about how things have been operating in SaddleBrooke Two. As I read the governance documents, the only mention I see of meetings are regular meetings and special meetings. I don't see the phrase work meetings. And so I'd like to be enlightened as to when you can take a vote and when you cannot. As has been pointed out, on November 18th in 2022, the current board took the most important vote since we made the transition in a work meeting, right after the business meeting had been adjourned. The business meeting went from 10 to 11:25. The work meeting went from 11:26 until 13 minutes later. And the only item was voting on the loan, the contract, and the company to go forward with the Mountain View renovation of its golf course. Now why, and there are 4 of you up at this table that were at that meeting, including our general manager, Walter Yazzie. As a superintendent, it was my job, if a board thought that they could take a vote or action at an inappropriate meeting because it hadn't been on an agenda and it hadn't been announced, to caution them not to do that. Because if they went ahead with that, I was probably going to lose my job. So I would like to know why that meeting was adjourned, why a work meeting was convened, and why that is when the motions were made and the decision was made to take out the loan, to renovate the Mountain View Golf Course, and to hire Desert Reflections, or whatever the name of the company is that did Mountain View.
Being you're looking at me, and I wasn't in that room, I don't have an answer for you.
Okay, Mr. Linegar was in that room, Mr. Eckert was in that room, Mr. Kill was in that room, and Mr. Yazzie was in that room. This is at the base of why trust has been eroded. I'd also like to know why, in looking at the minutes of the golf committee, on September 9th, 2022, full 2 months before the board even made this decision in their work meeting, Mr. Holock said, the contract for the Mountain View reset has been signed. The contract for the Mountain View reset has been signed. On October 11, 2022, Mr. Holock, or whatever his name is, said, we met with Desert Reflections to discuss items related to the project and the project start dates. We will be monitoring the various road crossings we need to do and beginning this the 1st of January. Golly gee, at the golf committee, they were discussing when they were getting started, and the board hadn't even passed it. Seriously? No. And then on November, this is in writing on the website, in the minutes. So we have a golf committee that, who signed that contract before the board voted for it? Who committed us to this loan? I've read every set of minutes of this board and the golf committee that are on the website, multiple times trying to figure out how in the world we got so blindsided.
I'll try to. I got this, Mark.
Yeah.
All right, ma'am. You're angry. I got it. All right. 2022 was a long time before this board was convened. So I'm going to tell you this. I appreciate your passion for wherever you're trying to go. The board in 2022 did what the board in 2022 did. It's not my job to put them on trial, nor is it yours.
I appreciate your opinion. I find that answer totally unsatisfactory, and I won't be gaslighted because I am pointing this out to the board and asking. We've got somebody here on salary. Mr. Yazzie, why was that vote taken in a work meeting? Who signed that contract with Desert Reflections before the voted on it? Who did that?
The president.
Teresa did. Yeah, okay. The president signed the contract.
The president signed the contract. She signed it. I mean, you're talking about a long time ago. And I was on the board. Okay. First of all, I can't state to whether your labeling of the meetings is correct or not because I can't have recall of a meeting in 22. Working meetings are basically that. It's a working meeting. A vote isn't taken in a working meeting. A regular board meeting, a vote is taken. Committees have no authority to do anything. Committees are a recommendation group that they recommend. So if you somehow, I think you mentioned something about the committee voted to approve a contract or something.
No.
Maybe I misunderstood you, but that definitely is the case.
September 9th, the contract for the Mountain View reset has been signed.
Yep.
Well, what is it, the golf manager, Holak?
That's Paul Halleck, ma'am.
Yeah, that's in writing, in the minutes. It's posted online. It was passed on to the board.
He was conveying information to the golf committee members.
And I believe at that time, Mr. Cambick, you were chair of the golf committee.
I was.
So you would have been there and heard that statement.
Ma'am, I was involved every step of the way in the development of the plan. The only way you could have been ambushed is you weren't paying attention to anything the board was doing throughout 2021 and throughout 2022. All of this information was public. The fact that the Mountain View irrigation system was going to be funded by a loan was first approved in 2019 in the 2020 budget. So the entire history here has been clearly articulated to the community through board meeting month after month after month. So if anybody was blindsided, it was only because they weren't participating.
I can find no discussion of the Mountain View reset in the board minutes until November 18th, 2022. And that wasn't a long time ago. That was just, what, just a year ago, November? That wasn't that, because you wanted to get started by January 1.
Man, that's just not accurate. It's just not accurate. I can tell you that in March of 2021, I was part of a board presentation to the community via Zoom, and we had the first golf meeting for the community in its history. In May of that year, the board treasurer, Rhett Benedict, presented the Mountain View rejuvenation plan. That's the facts.
Well, give me that date again, and I'll be happy to research those minutes. They may not be posted online. I read as far back as they are online.
Okay.
Again, Mr. Yazzie, can votes of this board be taken in work meetings?
All right, so I can't answer that exactly. However, as I've watched the board operate, they continue to address these issues with their attorneys, and their attorneys advise them. I believe that they operate as they felt was legally proper. So if they did it in mistake, then that wasn't on purpose. It was their best effort to operate within the law. So that's as much as I can say.
When we do working meetings, every working meeting I've ever been to, I don't recall ever having a vote, an official vote in any working meeting that we define as a working meeting like the one that's coming up.
That's not true.
That I can remember.
We just did it. Okay, ma'am, we have an obligation under Arizona statute is to inform the community at least 48 hours in advance of any meeting where we're going to conduct the business of the community.
Right.
Whether it's in this forum or if it's in a board working meeting.
Right.
So we publish an agenda.
Right.
The agenda is published, and if we take a vote, which we did here, we had a 3.5 hour board working meeting here a few weeks ago. And so all of this is done in accordance with Arizona statute. I don't know what more you want from us.
Well, what you said is exactly what I'd like to think happens, and so I'm still wondering about the explanation of adjourning the business meeting, reconvening in a work session, and taking the most important votes that have been taken in this community since transition.
Okay.
November 18th, 2022, all of this was voted for in a work session with no published or promoted agenda. And I'm just asking why.
I can't tell you. We'd have to ask that question of Therese Butler, and I'll have to get back to you.
In terms of clarification, my understanding then is that you operate similar but not completely like public entities. That anything of any importance that takes a vote of the board happens in the regular business meeting, not in work sessions. That's where we learn and discuss and debate. And then we go into a meeting.
Ma'am, I wish I could tell you how many hours we are devoting to the work of this community. It is not possible for us to get everything done right now with what we've got on our plate. I'm sorry. You may not like it. It's just the way it has to be till we get through this challenge. And maybe someday I'll live in a world where the business of the community can be entirely done this one time a month. Right now, not possible. But thank you.
I know you're working hard.
Hi, good afternoon, Joe Coachella, 40. Good afternoon, Joe Coachella, 48-135. I just want to say that I thank the board for all the hard work you're doing. I know you're doing a lot. There's a Paul's paper going around. I hope you've seen it, and I hope you consider it. I think we could handle this a little better than just giving the community the option of financing. And in spite of all the great work you've done, this one choice of financing only, it's not your best work. But you work incredibly hard, and I thank you for it.
Thanks, Joe.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I will close this meeting. Thank you.